This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Watch the greenbacks tumble.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Blissed? Your dial set correctly to USAPrepares.com. Here we go. We're broadcasting 2 hours. 2 hours today. From high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountain, Studio A. Information's on the website. And you can listen live, usaprepares.com. You can listen live on your phone. You can download the smartphone application at gcnlive.com. Converging threats are confronted daily by your instructors. I'm Vincent Finelli. Tom is producing the broadcast in Minnesota. Today we're going to talk about something that most people don't know about. We're going to talk about the system. We're going to learn the truth about what happens with politicians. We're going to talk about judges. We're going to talk about jail. We're going to talk about what's like being in jail. And from someone who was inside there. He's a commercial pilot. He's a Nemenhah medicine man. He's a private pilot. He's a farmer. He's a friend of mine. Welcome, Mike Parsons. Did we lose Mike already? We got you, Mike. There you go. So, Mike, we're going to talk about the criminal justice system today. We're going to talk about what it's like being on the inside. We'll talk about food. We'll talk about the carelessness and the insensitivity of what it's like being a guest in confinement. But I'd like to share a few minutes about a meetup we had last night. Mike, you've been to our meetups. You've been to a meetup we had in Lebanon. Mike Parsons is a USAPrepares.com instructor. Anyway, we had a really great meetup last night. Dr. Judy Wood was with us. And originally she was going to be in person. She was going to come back from a trip from the East Coast to Missouri. Well, she was going to go from the East Coast to Colorado and then swing by Missouri, stop in and give a seminar for us at Ziggy's. And so the Colorado presentation that she was going to give was canceled. So she was going to come out just for a meetup at Ziggy's, and I asked her not to do that. I asked her let's do a live teleseminar, and we'll have her back for another event, a large event that I'd like to have with her. But anyway, we spent 3 hours learning about half of the material at a rapid pace college physics class about what happened to the World Trade Center towers. And we learned that we have been biased by the words that we've heard used on the television, the words that we've heard used by the mainstream media. And words like small nukes, nuclear explosion, thermite, all kinds of descriptions as to what could have happened. But in fact, the buildings turned to dust. And we saw the evidence last night. And by the way, right after this hour, Dr. Judy Wood's going to join us. So, Mike, it was a fabulous, fabulous meetup. Everyone was stunned by the amount of disinformation that we learned about the World Trade Center, the towers, where did they go. And the interesting thing is, that's just the tip of the iceberg, Mike. You know, when you talk about the prison system, when you talk about what it's like in there and you talk about the corruption, you can see that the whole system is based on a foundation of lies, corruption, deception, individual greed. And it seems boundless. So, Mike, why don't we start with something that you have said about, your quote of Paul Harvey's quote, right? Why don't you tell us about that? Or do you want me to say it?
The quote that rings true today, as it did back when Paul Harvey made it, was that if you would like to see the most vile and despicable people on the face of the earth, just visit any Tennessee prison at shift change. And what he's talking about are the guards, not the inmates. Oh, yeah, there are some very vile people within prison, but pound for pound, you will not find a more evil and vile and despicable lot than prison guards. Why? As I coined the phrase soon after becoming a guest at the Henning Hilton, this is virtually the island of misfit employees because they couldn't hold a job anywhere else. They're usually lazy. They're usually excessively overweight. They're usually vile. They usually have problems adding two and two. They don't have normal mores as far as decency and courtesy towards other human beings. And for the most part, not all. Now, there are some people there that they never get advancement, and those are the people that do it right and don't do necessarily as they're told. They follow the policy. And those guys, they'll get a retirement, but they'll never advance. Those people that move up through the ranks, those are the yes men that will do anything to anyone at any time for any reason. And they do it. They merit out punishment daily to inmates just because someone told them to, whether it be an administrator, a warden, or perhaps somebody on the outside who slipped them $10,000 to merit out some punishment that they felt was due. And that happens, unfortunately, quite frequently. And in my case, there was 2 attempts on my life. And I'm obviously blessed because I'm still here, but in the first attempt on my life, the person that attacked me succeeded in puncturing a hole in my eardrum, and from once having perfect hearing and being a former sound engineer for one of the largest churches in the Memphis area and doing, weddings and funerals, people would listen to the sounds coming through my mixer board weekly on the radio and TV, to now, when I ask you to repeat something, it's because I didn't hear you. It's not because I was too busy making a cup of coffee on the other end. I didn't hear you. And so I'm dealing with that. And fortunately, the second attempt on my life, people that were in the church that respected me, when they found out about the hit, they went to the warden and said, look, this is a good guy. This guy's fixing to take him out. And they locked the place down, got the guy and moved him to East Tennessee. Of course, he still had the $10,000 on his books, mysteriously. But yeah, they are corrupt. Unfortunately, there's not much people on the outside can do unless they engage the system and speak out about it and try to expose it, because there's virtually nothing you can do on the inside. The time that I try to send letters to the news media, it cost me an extra year and a half of my life, well, actually 2 years of my life virtually in the Henning Hotel. And you notice some of the times people will be on radio and they'll talk about an experience in prison. They'll use the prison lingo. I choose not to do that simply because I did not want to be assimilated into their collective. I referred to my roommate as a roommate. The term they use is silly. They have various names that they use for different things. I chose not to do that. I chose to do things differently because when I left that place, I wanted to leave that place and not have a memory of something so despicable. And folks, the fact is prisons are there to prevent people from being a threat to other people. That's what they're designed for. They're not designed for the guards to be there to punish people, but they do. They do routinely, and that's just the way it is. Things such as food. Most people, I don't believe I met anybody over the age of 62 in the entire 2.5 years. Most people there die from disease and malnutrition. I would say over half of the people there, the inmates, have some type of disease and are on drugs. In 2.5 years, with a staff of a little over 200, they had 4 people die of cancer in their late 30s, early 40s. Yeah, it's a very unhealthy place. The normal diet there is white. If you could identify the food, it's whatever's white is what you're fed. White rice, white bread, potatoes, very little nutritional value. And occasionally you'll have bologna, high in sodium nitrate. And, of course, we know you get pancreatic cancer from sodium nitrites. And that's your diet. That's what you're fed. You cannot get anything that is natural or healthy. And, it's a place that no one should have to endure. I think California's taken the lead. They actually allow people to have food brought in and or they pay extra so much a night, kind of like a hotel, where they will actually cater in meals for you if you want to have regular food. But the average person whose family is destitute now that they're gone, they can't afford that, so they're having to deal with the system as best they can. And short of disappearing within the system and not opening your mouth is about the only thing you can do, because if you're someone like myself who's outspoken, who actually has the ability to articulate a point, I was hated. The inmates would tell me, these people literally hate you. They merit out more punishment and more disdain for you than anybody else, and you don't do a thing to anyone. And I said, do you know why that is? They said, yeah, because they're afraid of you, because they're afraid of your intelligence, that you are smarter than them. And because you're smarter than them, they're afraid of you, that because if you ever decide to do anything against them, you could destroy them. And that's where their fear is. They hate anything that's good and anything that has any semblance of intelligence. Other than that, as I discussed the other day, it's all about extortion. And I don't extort. I don't sell out. And that's what blows their mind. They can't understand how a person with the potential of losing their liberty, with the potential of losing, quote, privileges, would do what is in essence the right thing at all points. And I say,
Mike, hold that thought, Mike. Mike Parsons, we're talking about inside prison, the reality. USAPrepares.com. I'm Vincent Finelli. We'll be back. Mike Parsons with us, and Mike, I'd like to share this with you. Yesterday, I was on the phone with Aaron Brummett. He hails from Springfield, Missouri, and he was raised in Springfield, Missouri, right where we are. And he spends a lot of time talking with the police. As a matter of fact, they come visit him pretty often. He gets on a little, maybe 1 foot high soapbox, and he preaches on the street. He's a young guy. He's in his 30s. And they hauled him away. They arrested him, put him in jail, and I thought, geez, he's qualified to be one of us. So he's going to be at the meetup next Monday. And, the Springfield police are out of control. So this guy, Pastor Aaron Brummett, is preaching on the street. He's got a crowd paying attention to him. 10 to 12 cops, Springfield, Missouri's finest cops, show up, arrest him, put him in the paddy wagon, and haul him off to jail. Mike, it's out of control. So you're talking about, once you get in there, inside prison, what it's really like. So, Mike, you were saying that the prison guards are a bunch of misfits. They are the ones who can hardly get a job. Many of them are yes men. They'll do anything to anyone at any time. They like being rough on the prisoners because they are misfits, many of them, in a position of authority. So, that's just unconscionable. But let's take it to the next step. So not only do the prison guards abuse the prisoners, but they feed them unhealthy food, white, as you referred to it, white rice, white bread, white potatoes. What about vitamins? Do they get their daily vitamins, or are they treated to chemicals in the food and chemicals in the water to make them docile?
Well, they actually do have on what's called the commissary. You can order a little bottle of vitamins, which actually it's all synthetic. There's no real natural vitamins in it. But the problem is that you have to have a job. Now, everybody in the prison basically works. You start out, you're about 15 cents an hour. And so you can do the math. If you work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, you can see your paycheck's, going to be around $10 a month. And most people don't realize is that once you're in the prison and you have a job, you're assigned a job, it doesn't matter if you've only been working there for a day or a month. You have to buy all of your essentials such as soap, toothpaste, toothbrushes, razors, shaving cream, shampoos, anything at all. And, of course, on the commissary they have various types of food, but most of it is sugar-based. It's chemical-laden. It's not fit to eat. There's virtually nothing healthy available for a person to buy, to eat, that is suitable for human consumption. There was one occasion where they had a company come in and spraying around the building, and they refused to spray the walk-in cooler where they had cockroaches because the company knew that it was illegal for them to spray inside of a walk-in cooler with food in it. So they said, well, tell y'all what, just leave your stuff here and y'all go over there and we'll take care of it. And sure enough, they had an inmate strap on the spray rig and go in there and spray down the entire walk-in cooler with food. And then they proceeded over the next several weeks to feed that food to the inmates. And people wrote letters to the warden, to the state. The food was not thrown out. It was slowly over weeks' time. Now, they stopped after the second day feeding just that food, and they started portioning it out over the course of a month or two. They fed food that was sprayed with bug spray to the inmates, and those people that could smell it would basically get up and walk out and not eat. And so there were many, many weeks that I didn't eat. And when I say weeks, I mean like 4 or 5 days at a time. You just don't eat. Nothing. Unless you've bought something off of commissary, and that's all you've got. Or if you had a visit, they had concessions. You could eat a candy bar, and you get a visit once a week. So there were times when people would not eat except at visits if they were so fortunate. And those were the people that knew and wanted to survive. That's prison life, my friend. Or you can just eat up with everybody else that's making homemade liquor and basically selling themselves out to the guards for the drugs and things that they could trade and barter.
Mike, hold that thought. Hold that thought. Mike Parsons. We'll be right back. Class, Mike Parsons is with us. Mike Parsons was a commercial pilot, a private pilot, farmer, really brilliant guy. I've spent some time with him one-on-one. He's been to the expos, meetups. He's been on the radio with us. And through no fault of his own, he found himself on the wrong side of the bars. And so he's talking about firsthand experience. And I just want you to know that many of us here at usapreparedness.com have either had the police called on us, have been arrested, have been detained, have been put in prison. We have one of our instructors who was convicted of rape and murder at the age of 16. He was tried. He was railroaded. He was put in a maximum security prison for 16 years for a crime he didn't commit. Lazy jurors, people just not understanding how the system works. It's horrible. And he didn't do it. And Mike Parsons ran for office. He ran for office and he won. And because he won, He was set up. And to make a long story short, he found himself in prison for a while. And Mike, the prisoners, or as we'll refer to them as the guests, you mentioned that some of them sell themselves out to the guards. Tell us what you mean by that, please.
I'm not a person who ever got involved in drugs. I've gone to concerts where I've seen people smoke pot. That's it. Literally, I was involved in sports all through school. That was my focus. So when I went to prison, I observed people snorting cocaine, smoking pot, rolling cigarettes, taking various pharmaceutical drugs that they all got from the guards. The guards bring in the drugs. The guards bring, if you want a cell phone, the guards bring in the cell phones. They've got good cop, bad cop, where one cop A will sell you the cell phone for $400 on what they call a green dot card from Walmart. Then a month or two later, cop B will come in and search your room, find your cell phone, send you to the hole, and they will recycle the phone, and they split the money up to the level of the captain. The captains were involved in it too. This was how they supplement their income. One guard would bring in a pound of tobacco once a week for $400. The inmate would divvy it up into small fractional pieces and make about $1,200 off of the inmates via commissary and or other things. They have what they call a store man, which is a guy that will buy and then sell to you. You want a canned drink, or you want a cake, or anything else that you don't have the money for. I will give that to you now, but you have to repay me three for one. And there's businesses going on inside the prison all day long in every prison throughout this country. You can go to solitary confinement, maximum security, and you can have your own cell phone. You can have guards that will come in and provide you whatever you want if you've got the money. I saw it firsthand. There would be, when I was locked up in solitary 3 different times, each night an inmate would come through and say, Bobby Brown, Al Green, Bobby Brown, Al Green. And, of course, I didn't know what that was. Well, he's telling people he's got Bobby Brown, which is tobacco, or Al Green, which is pot. Did you want to buy some pot or tobacco? And now they didn't have any money because they're locked up. All they've got is their underwear, and they're in there by themselves. Well, they knew that they would get out, and they knew that they had the ability to come up with some money at some time, and they knew that they would pay. If they didn't pay, oh no, they would have to leave that prison and hope they went someplace where they couldn't get you, because they ran the gangs, and this was an organized criminal operation, and it wasn't the inmates in charge. No, that's the administration, the staff, the guards that are running the whole show. They want people to believe that the inmates run the asylum and the gangs do. Yeah, that's an illusion. The reality is it's organized crime run from the top. Now, in my case, I knew my rights. I knew that I didn't have to take the shots, and I rejected those. And when I first got there, they first strip you down, take you through all these various things, and they want you to have, as they say, we need to make sure you're healthy, so we're going to take a head x-ray. We're going to stand you in this machine and do a panographic x-ray. And everybody lined up like lemmings to do this, except for me. I said, no, thank you, and I stepped off out of line to the side. And everybody's coming. Well, they're going to throw that guy in the hole. They're going to beat him up. They're going to kill that guy, talking about the guards. And, the guard would come up and say, what are you doing? I said, no, sir, I don't take head x-rays. Thank you anyway, but I decline. And he started talking to another guard on the radio, and they called down the various teams that they have when people get out of line. And all the inmates are talking, and then I bowed my head in prayer. And one of the inmates that had came to the prison with me from the jail, they were transporting us at the same time, he had observed me for over 2 months in the jail, and they said, what is he doing? What is he doing? And this young black man said, that's Mr. Parsons. He's praying. Well, why? That's what he does. Just watch. And 4 or 5 guards surrounded themselves around me, and I just prayed. And I told the officer, 6 foot 8 inches tall, and I'm 6'5". This guy stood over me. And I said, sir, have you ever had cancer? And I struck a nerve, and he said, yeah, actually I have. I said, have any of you other guys had cancer? And 2 of them said, yeah, we've got it right now. I said, this machine causes cancer. And it is my job as a child of God to protect my temple, my body. That is something I can't do, and I still have a right to my own body and my health. Now, you can do with me as you please, but I will not walk in there and get a head x-ray. They took me and put me in solitary confinement. 2 days later, they put me in with the rest of the crew, and I never had a head x-ray because I stood my ground. And everybody else thought I was going to the hole or was going to be killed by the guards. And then when it came time for them to pass out the flu shots, again, I stepped out of line. I bowed my head in prayer. What is he doing? And one of the other inmates that remembered, because the original inmate that had been with me was no longer there, oh, that's Mr. Parsons. He's praying. And they said, what for? And they said, just watch. And here again, all these guards come up. What are you doing? Why aren't you in line? You got to get your flu shot. I said, and I told them the same thing. I have to take responsibility for my body. I can't do that. Do as you please with me. I cannot do that to my body. And they had me come over to a table and sit down. Okay, well, you don't want the flu shot. Just sign right here that you're rejecting the flu shot. And I said, okay, there you go. Go to your room now. All of a sudden, half the line got out of line and walked over to the other spot. And they said, what are you doing? We're doing what Mr. Parsons did. And that pissed them off. Pardon my language, but they were so mad because these men were learning that they had rights. They had the right to choose what did and didn't happen to their body. And that's why these people hated me, because others would learn the truth. And when I would go to church, the preacher, one day I asked him, I said, every time I come in here, you're stripping the proverbial bandage off these men's wounds. You're at the end of every sermon, you're saying, you did it to yourself, you put you in here. Now, whether they did or not, that's like stripping a bandage off a raw wound, because you're reminding them, and that's psychological abuse. Let these men alone. Leave them alone. Just read the word. And he said, well, that's my job. And I said, but you're pushing a pro-government agenda every sermon. He said, well, government is God. I said, are you serious? He said, yeah, it's a little g God, but still, government is God. I said, sir, you need to go back and read the Ten Commandments, because I believe thou shalt have no other gods before me. I'm a jealous God, is what God said right off the bat. And he smiled and said, well, that's your opinion. This is what they've got in the prisons. This is what you have to look forward to. Psychological conditioning. But if you know the truth, if you know what to look for, you won't fall prey to the traps that they have that will keep you there for life. There was one inmate serving a life sentence. He went in with a 2-year sentence 30-something years ago, and he was not part of the gangs. He would not assimilate, and then they attacked him, and he beat down one of the guys. He was a good fighter, and he accidentally killed the guy, and he got 15 years. They moved him to East Tennessee because he beat up the head of this gang and killed him. In East Tennessee, that gang found out. They attacked him again. Again, he had to fight until the death, and he survived. But now he's serving life in prison for defending himself. When they come and look, if they see bruises on your knuckles, they say, he initiated it, or he also fought back, so we're going to charge him equally. Now, if you've got no bruises on your hands, folks, they can't charge you. They never check your feet. That's a clue. But the reality is, if you don't know and you end up there, and any one of you can end up there. I'm not a criminal. I'm a guy who stood to defend his family when we were being shot at by an operative of the guy that I was suing for an election that had been stolen from me. And, yeah, the votes were flipped because the person counting the votes was appointed by the guy I ran against. And then when I went to trial, all the jurors were hand-selected by the person that the county executive picked to be the head of the election commission. They select the jurors that you get to choose from. No matter how I sliced it and diced it, there were 25 people to get 12 out of. They were all buddies of the old boy system. They were there to do their job, and that was to convict. That's the system we live in. Welcome to America. If you haven't been here before, it's a great country if you're a criminal. But if you're like me and you stand for something that's decent and honorable and you actually give a dang, well, it's not really the best place for you at the moment, but it can be. We just have to wake up the rest of the collective and speak out and stand our ground and not allow them to manipulate you into something less. Don't fall for the extortion trick. Stand your ground. Take responsibility. And at the end of the day, you'll be able to step out of line and you'll be left alone. That's all we want. We just want to be left alone.
Mike, I'm really glad we're having this discussion, because I think more and more of us are going to end up behind bars, not for doing the wrong thing, but because we're not willing to go along with the system. Just as the preacher that I was telling you about, Pastor Aaron, preaching from the street, goes to jail. Mike Parsons, Vin Finelli, USA Preparedness.com. What do the guards want? That's what I'd like to know next. We'll be right back. Mike Parsons with us. Mike from Tennessee. You've heard him on the radio many times with us. Mike, I've got a couple questions. I'd like to see if we can get to both of them before the end of this hour. What do the guards want, Mike? These lazy, overweight misfits. What do they want?
Most of them grew up where they didn't have the ability to do much because they didn't achieve, they didn't try. They didn't make the football team. They couldn't get a date to the prom. They basically were relegated to second fiddle simply because they didn't try hard. They wanted to be in control. They wanted power. And now that they've got a job with it, this is not all guards. Some people get a job in the prison to find out how screwed up it is, and they leave as soon as they can. They're not there very long. But those people that are attracted to this, they want power to control another man. They want the illusion of respect, when ultimately they'll never get respect because they are not respectful themselves. But in their world, in their mind, they feel like they've somehow got one up on you because they've got the uniform and you don't. You go to a room that's a 7-11, 7-foot wide, 11-foot long room with a commode and a steel bed and a concrete wall and a fluorescent light, and that's your existence. They get to go home. And they feel like during that time that they're there on their shift, they can be as rude and as ugly and as evil and as mean and as demeaning as humanly possible because in their mind, that's their job because you're the scum of the earth. If you're here, you must be guilty of something. Everybody's guilty of something in their eyes because they are. You can't be any different than them. You must be as bad as me. And that's just the way it is. I think that people have forgotten the fact of the common law. You have a right under common law to certain things, life, liberty. No man can take away these unalienable conditions. But yet they forget that everyone has this right. And for you to treat a human being something less than... I can't imagine treating people the way they treat people. It's inhumane. And I know that this country is, I think, at a turning point. I spoke the other day about the right of the people recognized that we are the creators. We are the sovereigns. If you look up the definition of sovereign, Bouvier's in Black's Law Dictionary, I mean, it was the king who was subverted to being the subject of the sovereigns, the people, in order to prevent having his head cut off back in the 1700s in Great Britain. And I think that spirit is still around today where people realize that this is ours. And I think Thomas Jefferson said it best, a little revolution now and then is a good thing. The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. And now I say that with the heart of a person who loves life. I'm a follower of Christ. I love life and all the gifts that the Creator has given me. I support those and I protect those viciously. Even those people that have done me wrong, I would not want any harm to them. Would I like to see them serve their time behind the 7-Eleven Crossbar Hotel? Certainly. I think there's an accountability that needs to be done and a reckoning. But as though people can go through their life and just look the other way perpetually, once upon a time, I had freedom and liberty, I thought, until I started seeing how corrupted the system was and how controlling they were. And when I started to engage that system to try to hold them accountable, I found out really quick the system will not hold itself accountable. And when you go to the person who's in charge of keeping the peace and they're the actual tyrant who's running the corruption, it's a rude awakening. You cannot do anything with the help of these corrupt systems. You can only do things when you click your heels, as Dorothy said, get up off your butt, put down the remote, and take responsibility. Certainly, we would like to turn this around peacefully, but as the Tennessee Constitution says, you have the right to alter, abolish this government by any means you see fit, and you have to determine the means. The means, the definition of the word means, is the wherewithal.
Mike Parsons,
you do it.
We're out of time. Mike, we've got to do several more broadcasts about being inside prison, and then we need to prepare those who are entering prison for the best way to survive it. Mike Parsons, thanks so much for being with us. I'm Vin Finelli. This is USAPrepares.com. We'll be back after the top of the hour.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? This is hour number 2 of USAPrepares.com. We're going to be talking about where did the towers go? Where did the towers go? We're talking about the 9/11 event. World Trade Center towers. Where did they go? And with us for this broadcast hour is Dr. Judy Wood. Dr. Judy Wood, welcome aboard.
Hello, thank you very much.
Dr. Judy Wood, I want to share with you, last night you presented an unbelievably fascinating live teleseminar with us at Ziggy's. And we've been going to Ziggy's for about 3 years now. And we had an absolutely packed house. And so we had the screen up at the end of the restaurant and seats all around. And everyone was so quiet, watching, listening to the video portions of your presentation, the photograph portion of your presentation, your description of what we were seeing and learning about. And everyone was riveted as you described how these buildings turned to dust. Now, you and I have been on the air before on the 1st of this month, and we did a broadcast called Where Did the Towers Go 101. This is the second in the series. This is Where Did the Towers Go 102. And by my calculations, it looks like it's going to take about 16 broadcasts to go through your book. I'm referring to it as the de facto encyclopedia of the evidence of where did the towers go. It's unbelievable, and just simple arithmetic tells us it will take us about 16 hours to go through this fascinating book. And your books were sold out last night. The autographed copies of Where Did the Towers Go were sold out last night, so I can talk to you offline about what we need to do next. But we learned something. We learned something from you that very few people remember, and that is, why don't you look at what you actually see with your own eyes as compared to what you see with your own eyes and what you're told you saw. And that was a very, very important point of what you made. And we're going to go through some more of this 500-page encyclopedia that you wrote, a scientific work, 9/11, the towers, where did they go? Dr. Wood, I'd like to ask you this. How long did it take you to do the research that went into the writing of Where Did the Towers Go?
Well, I guess if you count from the first time I started working on it, that was 9/11/01. Because what I saw on the TV, it didn't make sense from anything I knew about, and what the, as you call them, the talking heads were telling me I was seeing, that didn't add up. So when that happens, I just tune out my ears, and I just keep looking with my eyes. Because to me, it looked like somebody pulled a piece of yarn on a sweater, and the whole thing started unraveling. And you stop and think about it. How would you expect a building to look if it truly collapsed? Nope, didn't look like that. And so I became fascinated with it then, and I assumed the grown-ups were going to look into it. And it became apparent the grown-ups weren't going to take care of it. Somebody needed to, and this is our world. This is our country. It's our job.
So let me ask you: is it at least 5 years worth of research that went into your book?
Oh yeah, it's like 8 years, you could say.
Okay. Yeah, it's a very serious book, and I'd like to share this with you. A couple of very interesting things happened last night. We had a new member of our class come to the meetup. He's a dentist, and he bought your book many years ago, and I just met him for the first time, and he's in the Springfield, Branson community. He's a dentist, and so he's very educated, he's highly trained, and he couldn't believe, he was absolutely shocked that we had the real Dr. Judy Wood with us at that teleseminar, and one of the instructors said, oh, well, she was supposed to be here, but Vincent asked her not to come because he didn't want her to drive all the way out, and just, for a meetup at Ziggy's, he wanted to do a larger event. So he was really, really impressed. And then the other thing I'd like to share with you is we had at least 8 instructors at the meetup last night. Well, there's you, and John Reagan was there, Linus Ertley was there, Ken Hurley, Judy Dollarheight, John Dollarheight, Howard Shayne, and others. And as soon as we started the presentation, one of our instructors came up to me and said, listen, we're being ejected from the meetup. We will not be able to stay very long tonight. And I was absolutely furious. I mean, smoke was coming out of my ears. And then the waitress told me at 8:45 that we had to be out of there by 9:15 at the latest. And I was so angry. I said, you know what? We'll be back next week, but I don't know if we'll ever be back after that, after they pull that stunt. Here's what happened, Dr. Wood. I believe that one of two things happened. They said a sorority was coming. 100 girls from a sorority was coming to take over the restaurant after in the evening. Now at 9:30. Well, I waited till 10 o'clock to see these sorority girls because I didn't believe it. They didn't show up. At 10 o'clock, we were out of there by 9:20. We were out. I waited till 10 o'clock with some other instructors to see these sorority girls who were supposedly coming to take over the restaurant. They didn't show up at least by 10 o'clock. Here's the point I'm trying to make. I believe that it's one of two things. Either they want to throw us out of the restaurant early because we stay, hours and hours and hours, or, Dr. Wood, some minions for the government saw that you were going to be there, and they wanted to shut us down. Has that ever happened to you before?
Well, a lot of interesting things happen, and I guess to me that becomes normal. But it's usually more subtle. I'm curious about your instructor who told you had to leave. He was being tossed out by someone, or
no. He was told by the management of the restaurant that we had to leave. So they wanted to break the news to him so he could deliver a softer blow to me, because they knew that if the management of the restaurant came up to me and said, hey, Vincent, you're going to have to get out of here by 9:15 tonight, they knew I would just have exploded right then and there. And they didn't want that to happen. So they wanted to deliver a softer blow to me through one of our other instructors. But the point is, we got thrown out of Ziggy's after 3 years of being there. We got to find a new place because I'm furious with them. I really am. Dr. Wood, We fill up that restaurant every Monday night. We absolutely pack it. No other organization is able to do that because we have such a dedicated class. But anyway, the bottom line is, I think it has something to do with your information. They don't want your information out there. That's my belief. I believe that government minions have pressured Ziggy's either through their liquor license or through something else that I don't know about to get us out of there. It's like, hey, you want to keep your liquor license? And, it'd be better if you didn't have those kind of guys because they talk about defending themselves and gardening and now they've gone way overboard with talking about 9/11. So I want to share that with you. So, Dr. Wood, let's start with this. Let's start with the last time we talked about people jumping out of the windows
of the World Trade Center. Early.
Yeah. Okay. Excuse me. I didn't say that.
Yeah.
I didn't say that right. Yes, they left the building prematurely. Why did they? They were inside the building, and then the next thing they were outside the building. Can you tell us about that?
Well, what we can look at is the expressions on their faces, their actions, and for one thing, there was an awful lot of them coming out of the building. Firefighters estimated somewhere between 3 and 4 per minute from each face of the North Tower. And I added that up. Let's take the lower value. Let's say 3 people per face. That times 4 faces, that's 12 people a minute. Times 100 minutes, that's 1,200 people. For just an approximate number. And you add to that the 343 firefighters, we have now, 1,543. They're who are inside the middle of the building. And it was something like 1,590-something different bodies identified through DNA and so forth. So that's pretty much equal, which means that the only ones identified, it appears, were approximately the ones who left early. And the ones left in the building, there's nothing left to identify. That's what that says. But why they were going out the windows, whether it was, deliberate or not, no firefighter has ever seen anything like that, even close to it. One firefighter in 20 years on the force had only seen one person jump, and that was from like a 3rd-story building where there was a chance of survival. So it did not make sense that people would leave the building. Also, when they went out the windows, it wasn't like there was fire there. Why aren't they just hanging their head out the window? Mm-hmm. We didn't see fire in those places. And you start looking at the people more carefully. And there's one particular photo that struck me. It has a guy who appears to be hanging by one hand and one foot from the 105th floor, taking his pants off. He's already taken his shirt off. And they cause you to wonder, why would someone be dangling by one hand and one foot trying to take their clothes off outside of the building? If there's smoke in there wasn't smoke pouring out the window, but let's say there's smoke inside, and he has some strange reason why he wants to take his pants off. Well, taking a big, deep breath, step inside, take the pants off, and step back outside and go back to breathing. What necessitates
Dr. Judy Wood.
taking the pants off outside?
Dr. Judy Wood's with us, and we're on lesson number 2. Where did the towers go? World Trade Center towers. Where did they go? They turned to dust. And we're doing a series of broadcasts on what happened. What happened? We'll be right back. Class, we're talking with Dr. Judy Wood, scientist. And she's written a 500-page book called Where Did the Towers Go? And we were talking about the people who left the building early. Dr. Wood, about 1,200 people left the building early, plus 343 firefighters. Did the firefighters leave the building the same way that the others left the building? Did they just...
No, they were trapped inside the building on the lower floors. They were still coming up the stairs and so forth, and were caught inside the building or down at the base.
Okay. I was just wondering if...
There were the
if they
people
were
that were in
hanging out.
stairwell B that did survive in, on the second, third, and fourth floor of stairwell B, but ones outside of that particular area did not survive.
Okay. All right. Well, let's continue on. Do you want to go into the temperature of, let's say, burning kerosene in a kerosene type heater? Where, why is it that if the building were being burned and destroyed by the fire from the jet fuel, which is similar to kerosene, do you want to start with that? And then continue on to
kerosene, or also I call this chapter 4, the magic shows or the power of suggestion.
Yeah.
How is a magic show run? It's the power of suggestion, and I've got a quote at the beginning of the chapter that we are never deceived; we deceive ourselves with the suggestion. When somebody shows you a card trick, for example, they shuffle the cards, and they show how carefully they're shuffling the cards, and then they split the deck and, pretend like they're not looking, want the person in the first row to pull out a card. And then now stick that, show everybody else the card. No, don't show me. Now stick it back in there so I know where it is. And so the person looks around the other way, and then they hand them back the deck of cards. And then the magician flips through and pulls out, aha, it was the ace of spades. And how'd you know that? The magician spent a lot of attention focusing on making sure you get that card back in so I can't find it. So that you're focusing on that issue, on that problem, where the magician actually looked at the card before they stuck it in there. And they, and split the deck so that they knew you would pick the ace of spades because that's the card they put right there for you. So the people are left solving the wrong problem. They've assumed the problem happened elsewhere instead of looking at what actually happened. And they end up tricking themselves. The magicians, it doesn't work well when they lie, but they cause you to make the wrong assumptions. And that is very powerful because it's us deceiving ourselves. And so you don't want to think that you lied to yourself.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, because when we look at where did the towers go, we use our own knowledge base. We say, well, there's explosives that could blow it up, and it must have been really, really hot because the metal seemed to disappear, and we know about heat, and
coming out of it.
Yeah, so naturally, in the talking heads, we're talking about the building being on fire. Okay, so we have a kerosene type heater. We have a couple here at the farm. I know a lot of people that have them in case of an emergency, where they put kerosene in them and they have a wick and they can fire them up, and they're in a steel enclosure for safety, so you don't set your house on fire. But yet, the thin steel skin of these kerosene heaters doesn't melt. But yet, we're thinking that the jet fuel of the airplane that flew into the World Trade Center towers had enough energy in the fuel to bring down the building, melt the concrete, or crack the concrete, and melt the steel reinforcement. Is that possible?
No, I've got a good pop quiz that'll cure you of that. Go to drjudywood.com/911. That's drjudywood.com/911. This is an actual quiz I gave to my class. We just finished studying the effects of heat on metals.
Okay. I'll tell you what, class, it's Dr. Judy, Judy, Wood, WOOD.com/9, 1, drjudywood.com/911. Go there right now. We'll be right back with Dr. Judy Wood. Class, Dr. Judy Wood is with us, and if you'd like to get to our website, you can go to usaprepares.com. As always, at the bottom of the page, you'll find Dr. Judy Wood. click on the link. It'll take you right to our website, or you can go to drjudywood.com. And if you're interested in her book, it is absolutely fabulous. I wholeheartedly recommend it. I have a copy. Dr. Wood, you've got a pop quiz, drjudywood.com/911. Please take us through that pop quiz that you've offered to your students.
Sure. It says, let's say you want to boil a pot of water. So you wad up a bunch of old metal coat hangers to make a grill to support the pot of water over your campfire. You fill up the pot of water, put it on the grill, and then start the fire going. Which is most likely going to happen? Check all that apply. You want to read off the choices?
Yeah, well, let me just describe this. So, class, what we've got is a large spaghetti pot. I'm looking at the page here on her website, drjudywood.com/911. There's a large, like spaghetti pot. Let's say it's 8 quarts, and it has a lid on it. And these coat hangers are made into like a structure that is supporting the pot off the ground. Let's say 6 to 8 inches. So there's a ball of coat hangers, many coat hangers. Let's say there's 6 of them or 8 of them that are supporting this pot of water. Some wood or fire material is put under the water. There's a big flame around the pot. Actually, the flame is a yellow-orange flame, and the flames are actually reaching higher than the lid of the pot. So the question is, after you see this, what is likely to happen? A, nothing changes except the fire eventually burns itself out. B, the metal coat hangers gradually begin to sag and lower the pot. C, the coat hangers suddenly shatter into straight sections without warning. D, the metal coat hanger instantly turns to dust and the pot slams to the ground. E, the pot melts the coat hangers and leaks water, which puts out the fire. Or F, the pot and metal coat hangers spontaneously turn into a fountain of dust, shooting the dust into the upper atmosphere. And G, none of the above. Please explain. Are you asking me for my answer?
Yeah, well, I was curious. Usually the students get down to E or F and they start giggling
Yeah.
as they're reading it.
Mm-hmm.
And you see the picture right below that is the cover picture of my book.
Let me go down to there. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And
the dust.
Describing F, the metal pot and coat hangers spontaneously turn into a fountain of dust and shooting dust in the upper atmosphere. So when you look at it in the context of a pot on metal coat hangers, which many of us may have done in Cub Scouts, something like that, you start seeing the ridiculousness of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
When metal gets hot, as it heats up, it sort of turns towards taffy. It just gets more less stiff. Mm-hmm. It easily deforms. So if the pot doesn't change weight and the coat hangers get softer, pretty soon they're not going to be stiff enough to hold up the pot, and it's going to start sagging down. It's not going to shatter spontaneously shatter into bits.
Right.
But what we saw in 9/11 was just that. So heat doesn't do that to metal. Doesn't turn into powder, or squirt dust up in all directions.
Mm-hmm. Right. And when a building does go down, is there dust that goes higher than the building? Is that typical? I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah, in controlled demolition even, when the stuff slams to the ground, it gets busted up into pieces, but the dust doesn't really rise above the original height of the building, or not by much, and it rolls out a little bit and stops. If you, on your basement floor, dumped a bag of flour and then dropped a cookie sheet on top of it, poof the dust out to the sides, and you'd get thick dust, thinner and thinner and thinner, taper off, just scattered out. It wouldn't keep rising up and go upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
But yet the dust behavior on 9/11 was bizarre in itself. Fine dust and it went up. But heat doesn't do that. And also a wood stove. After you stoke the fire, it doesn't go drip, 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 melting.
Right.
And when it first brought out this story on 9/11 about, airplane jet fuel, I was thinking, gee, when an airplane flies overhead, do you get a drip, drip, drip of the engine melting?
No, you don't. And also, if you look at a gasoline engine, gasoline is far more explosive than jet fuel. And why, if that were the case with the jet fuel, why don't gasoline cast iron engines melt? I guess that's your point, isn't it? That's your point, isn't it?
Yeah. That it's explosive in the engine, and it burns, but it doesn't melt the engine.
Mm-hmm.
And anyone listening to this would know that an engine, a jet engine running on kerosene flying overhead, it wouldn't keep flying if the engine was melting from that jet fuel.
Mm-hmm.
So jet fuel doesn't do that. It's also hard to light kerosene, unlike
It's very
gasoline.
hard to light. It's very hard to light kerosene. As a farmer, I can tell you that if I want to start a fire with a bunch of wood, which is perfectly legal here on our farm in Missouri, I can pour kerosene, I can pour motor oil in it. You actually have to bring the match up to it. It's not like gasoline where as the match approaches it, the volatilized fuel combusts. It's not like that. You actually have to bring the match to it and hold the match there for a little bit for the kerosene or the jet fuel or the motor oil to ignite. You're absolutely right. So Dr. Wood, what does that tell us?
Know. Yeah, that we were tricked into deceiving ourselves about this. When they, on 9/11, they're telling us about jet fuel. The jet fuel, when is this fireball? It's all burned up. So how can it be burning up the building too? There's a lot of things that just didn't add up about that.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. So the plane slammed into the building. The
The alleged planes. We're not going to make any assumptions here. Just the alleged plane.
Okay. I'm just thinking about what the video showed, and there was a big fireball. I guess, is that an alleged fireball or was that a real fireball? Because my eyes saw a fireball.
We don't know. We don't know. It's this thing that looked like a fireball.
Okay, there you go. It looked like a fireball. Okay, so the reporters, the talking heads on television, told us that a plane crashed into one of the towers, and a plane crashed into another tower, and then they told us we saw fireballs and we saw some smoke. But the interesting thing, Dr. Wood, is when petrochemicals burn, if I see a fire off in the distance from our farmhouse, I can tell whether it's woods on fire or whether it's a home, a structure, because of the color of the smoke. If it's a petrochemical composition in the fire, like a roof or furnishings or vinyl siding, it's going to be black smoke.
Right, it's got a lot more of the carbon in it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very beautiful orange fireball-looking thing. We don't know what it was. We're just saying what it appears to be. The alleged fireball, the alleged plane. But being told that melted the steel or weakened the steel significantly so that the steel shattered, we know better than that. People who've, as children, messed with metal coat hangers, bend them back and forth, and they get fatigued and they break. Mm-hmm. But they also become easier to bend as they get hotter. Mm-hmm. And paper clips do the same thing. They don't shatter. They don't turn into dust. So what we observed does not match the story we were told while we were watching it. But people tend to prefer what they're told over what they observe.
Okay.
And that's an important lesson to work past. We all know that wood stoves don't melt when you stoke them with firewood. Yeah,
no matter how hot I've made a fire, and I've actually had a Franklin wood stove glow a red color, running really, really hot, but it didn't melt. It did not.
Even the burners on your electric stove get red hot.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean they're going to melt.
Mm-hmm.
But also the time it takes to get that heat, get it up to temperature is not instantaneous. To get heat into something. If you have something, a fireball on the outside of a piece of steel, it takes a while for that heat to get into the steel, and by then the fireball is gone. Your wood stove isn't instantly hot when you start a fire in it. It has to work up to temperature. So you don't get this sudden fracturing. You would get something kind of sagging like the pot over the coat hangers.
Mm-hmm. All right. Do you want to go through some more of your pop quiz, or do you want to go into the bathtub?
Oh, go to the bathtub. That was basically the pop quiz, and I have some other pictures below just for information, but it was just those three pictures that, it has dust in the upper atmosphere from the coat hangers shattering into powder because they got too hot. It doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the bathtub is the base of the World Trade Center towers. Let's talk about what you mean by that.
Yeah, a few people realized that the towers were actually built in the Hudson River, but with the dike around them because they're on bedrock, which is 70 feet. That's 7 times 10, 70 feet below the water table. They're below sea level. So that's about sea level there on the Hudson River, and so to keep the basement dry, they have this dike built around it. They call it the bathtub. It started out, how they built it was with a slurry wall, and some often refer to it as the slurry wall still. But they built this dike around it. We'll wait till after the break.
Yeah, let's talk about the bathtub when we come back after this break. Class, we are not going to get through it today. And what we're teaching is how to use your own eyes and discern what you actually see rather than what you've heard. And we're going to get through it. It's going to take hours and hours, but you're going to learn what happened when we get back. Class, we're going page by page through the encyclopedia, as I refer to it. Where did the towers go? Evidence of directed free energy technology on 9/11. We're talking about the bathtub with Dr. Judy Wood, drjudywood.com. Link on the website, usaprepares.com, page 1, where the instructors are at the bottom of page 1. We're talking about the bathtub. Bathtub has 70-foot high walls below ground. So 70-foot high walls, think of it like a 70-foot deep basement. Okay, starts at ground level and goes below sea level. So the two buildings went somewhere, but with the weight of all that concrete and steel, Dr. Wood, the evidence shows very little damage to the bathtub. Please tell us about that.
Exactly. You have this big, void in the ground. Of course, when you remove the structure, the underground structure and adjacent structure that supports the other side of the bathtub wall, the inside, it does become a little bit unstable because you have the pressure of the water on the outside with nothing. If the building's gone, you don't have the equal force or the support on the inside pushing back. And when they brought in the heavy earth-moving equipment the next day, that did more damage to the bathtub wall than two 500,000-ton buildings supposedly slamming down on it. Does that make sense? These big mega cranes. The picture down Liberty Street where the bathtub wall started leaning in as a crack opened up down the street because you removed the structure from the inside of the bathtub. But as for the building falling on the bathtub wall, it didn't destroy it. When, of course, now that the ground's peeled open, it rained in, you have fire hoses, dumping water in there, and the PATH trains, that's the Port Authority Trans-Hudson subways that go under the Hudson River up onto the shore. Well, it was on the shore, and it opened in 1909, and then they relocated it to go within the bathtub on that bedrock when they built the World Trade Center. did they build stuff better back then? They were worried that they may have damaged the path train tunnels because there was water down there, but once they pumped the water out, it stayed dry. In other words, that's just where the water was draining to. That was, when rain was dumping in the bathtub. Mm-hmm. So the path train tunnels were not damaged from the building's destruction. They're waterlogged, but that was easily repaired. It was built in 1909. That's pretty amazing.
Absolutely is amazing. And the other thing that's amazing is if I called to get a crane, a large crane, and I said I needed it by tomorrow, that would be a wish. I can't imagine having even a small crane available immediately and delivered the next day.
These mega cranes look like they had just come off the assembly line that showed up. There's ones where they bring in the parts and assemble them, these huge cranes. Mm-hmm. But, maybe they had just made them and somebody else was waiting for them, and they, took them off the assembly line for emergency because, heck, if there's a live person down there, you want to be able to get to them. So maybe that's why they, got preference to bring them in then. But those cranes started causing more damage, and then they had to establish new rules that no crane could be within X number of feet of another crane. They couldn't be within Y distance of the bathtub wall. And the cranes had to lean way out and reach into the bathtub. They couldn't drive up into it. But imagine that. The bathtub was not catastrophically damaged. It wasn't ruptured. It kept the Hudson River out. I'm not saying it didn't get a scratch on it, but it held the Hudson River out. It didn't get destroyed.
Dr. Wood, if we're going to have a large number of classes just on this, it's going to take us quite a while to get through it, probably 16 classes total. If someone wants to buy the book and follow along with us, can they get it right from drjudywood.com?
Yep. Well, on drjudywood.com, you can click on, there's a link to go to the book site, which is wheredidthetowersgo.com. Okay. All one word.
I'll put a link on our... I'll put a link on page 1 on our website, wheredidthetowersgo.com. Dr. Judy Wood, thank you so much for being with us last night, and you're going to be with us next Monday at Ziggy's. Above all, honesty and integrity. What happens